This is Kevin Patton with another tip for reducing your study time. This time we'll be talking about flashcards. Let's start with the basics. First of all, what in the world is a flashcard or study card? Well, you probably use these in elementary school to learn your multiplication facts, or maybe you use them in a Spanish course to learn all those new Spanish vocabulary words. It's basically just a card with a term on it that you've never seen before, like this one, carbaminohemoglobin. So you look at that, you puzzle over it a little bit and make a stab at what that might mean. Then you flip over the card to see if you're right or not. The trick here is not to really fret about it. What you want to do is just look at them over and over and over. The whole idea of a flashcard is that you carry these around with you and just practice, practice, practice without sweating it. And before you know it, once you've seen this card on carbaminohemoglobin about 10 times, you'll know it without any kind of frustration and in a quicker time than you might imagine. Now this gets to something that we educators like to call the learning pyramid. The learning pyramid sort of maps out how we learn things, and it all starts at the bottom with a good foundation in remembering the basic facts. So using flashcards is going to help us build that foundation of basic facts by basically memorizing them and making them part of our own working vocabulary. They're not necessarily the best thing for learning the higher levels of thinking, like understanding and applying and evaluating and creating and so on, but they do provide us that foundation. So flashcards are not going to be your only study tool, but they're a good way to start a new topic. Now let's learn how we really get our flashcards. First of all, you can make them yourself. Another thing is you can use published study cards on the topic that you're studying. I recommend that you use a combination of both. Now, if you're going to make them, you want to use 3x5 index cards or paper of a similar size. You can use something larger or smaller, but I think the 3x5 size is really handy to use. It's easy to carry around, and it fits enough information that makes this technique very usable. You can also use your computer to generate flashcards. For example, software that you already have, like a word processor, where you can build a table, print out the table, and then cut out the cards. Or you can use a spreadsheet program for the same thing. There's also a lot of different online resources for study cards. Two of them I've listed here, the Anki system and also StudyStack. Both of these are online versions of study cards where you would be building your study cards and then reviewing them online. Some of them you can also print them out and carry them with you. Another thing about these online sources is that you can share your stack of study cards with another student, and likewise you can use study cards that were made by another student. But I do want to warn you, if you're going to do that, please verify the accuracy of them. Double check them for the correctness, not only your own study cards, but those from other people, because you really don't want to be learning the wrong facts. There are some more advanced ways to use study cards that you might want to develop. For example, you might want to develop a style where you use color coding or various symbols to represent different kinds of concepts or different subcategories of the facts that you're learning. Let's take a look at an example. Here's our carbaminohemoglobin card again, but this time a color code has been added where different parts of the term have been given different colors. Carb in blue, amino in green, hemoglobin in red. And this highlights different essential pieces of that description or definition. Notice how the author of this card has also added a pronunciation guide under the term, which might be useful to you, especially with a long term like carbaminohemoglobin. Notice also at the bottom of the card that this person has added some chapter references to show where this term or where this concept is discussed in the textbook. Over time, you might be wanting to add additional facts, such as, in this case, a brief description of what that substance actually looks like. Another advanced technique would be to use pictures. For example, let's say you need to learn where the frontal bone is or what it looks like. One option would be to draw a little sketch of the frontal bone because this is really a visual concept, and that might be better for you than writing out a verbal description. But if your drawing is about as good as mine, you'll want to maybe use a drawing from somewhere else and just tape it or paste it to your card and then highlight the part that you need. This picture I got from Wikimedia Commons. There's a lot of online resources where you can get copyright-free images that you could print out and use for your study cards. You might also want to consider photocopying your workbook or lab manual or textbook, and there might be other sources that your instructor might provide for building your own set of visual study cards. Another advanced system would be using the Leitner system, named after its developer, who was a German science writer. And he said you should have a series of boxes where you stack up your study cards. And these boxes you would look at varying frequencies. For example, in your first box you might carry that with you. The next one you might look at that twice a day. The next one once a day. The one after that every other day. You might have another stack that you look at every week. And so what you're going to do is take a card and look at it, and if you answer it correctly, you're going to move it to a less frequently used box. If you get it right again when it's in that less frequently used box, then you'll move it to an even less frequently used box. If you get one wrong, then you're going to move them in the other direction. You're going to take the incorrectly answered card and move it to a more frequently used box. And if you get it correct again, then you'll or incorrect again, then you'll use it to an even more frequently looked at box. This whole system is based on the idea that you want to review the ones you get wrong more frequently than the ones you get right, which makes sense, right? You want to focus on the stuff you're having trouble with, and the stuff that you're not having trouble with, you want to review less frequently. So I have a system that is an adaptation of this system that Leitner developed, where you really just carry around that same stack of cards all the time. And if you answer it correctly, then you're going to move it all the way to the back of that stack. So here's carbaminohemoglobin, and by now we have that right. So we're going to move that all the way to the back, and we're going to drop it in at the very back of that stack. Now if we get one wrong, what we're going to do is move that not all the way to the back of the stack, but we're going to move it somewhere closer to the front so that we'll see it again more quickly, and we'll have more opportunities to take a look at it and really get that information down. So let's say the next card is oxyhemoglobin. We get that one wrong. So instead of moving it to the back, we're going to move it somewhere in the middle. And the harder it is, the closer to the front we're going to move it so that we have an earlier opportunity to review it. So it's the same as the Leitner system. It's just a slightly adapted form. Now getting back to our learning pyramid here, as I said, all of what we've been doing is really helping us remember those basic facts, and that's going to be the foundation for the higher levels. But can we use flashcards for getting us up into the understanding level or the applying level? Yeah, I think there's some ways of doing that. Let's take a look at a couple of examples. One would be putting things in order. For example, you might have some process that has steps that you need to learn in the correct order, or maybe you have some structure that you need to know how the layers go in the correct order, or some other structural aspects that have a particular order to them. So here we have phases of mitosis that we need to learn what the correct order is, and so we're going to take those cards and just kind of deal them out in any order, and then we're going to take a look at them and see, are they in the correct order? In this case, no, they're not quite in the correct order, so we're going to rearrange them so they are in the correct order, and that'll help us learn how to do that and what order they come in. And when we're done with that, we're going to shuffle them up and we're going to lay them out again and rearrange them again. And so you do that numerous times. It really isn't very difficult, and before you know it, without even thinking about it, you've got it down. You know what order they come in. Yet another way to get to those more advanced levels of thinking is to relate concepts. For example, let's say you have a stack of cards on blood cells. So you lay out that title card there, blood cells, and then you find in your stack the three main kinds of blood cells. The thrombocytes are platelets, the erythrocytes are red blood cells, or the leukocytes, which are white blood cells. And then you might find some other cards in the stack that you can lay out there, and we have oxyhemoglobin and carbaminohemoglobin, which we're going to lay on the erythrocyte card because those are both substances that are found within the erythrocyte and not the other kinds of blood cells. Then we find these two other cards, granulocytes and agranulocytes, and those are categories of leukocyte. So you can see we're laying them out in ways that show us relationships among these concepts or among these terms. So what you want to do is shuffle them up and lay them out there again and rearrange them. And the next time you might find slightly different relationships, because there are sometimes more than one kind of relationship among different concepts. So it's going to help you explore those relationships and kind of learn what they are. And if you keep practicing this over and over, then again, you're going to really be learning those relationships, not just the basic facts, but how they relate to one another. What you might want to do is, once you get them all laid out, is convert it into a concept map. Now you can do this by taking a photograph using your cell phone or a digital camera and then printing it out and reviewing that later, or maybe just drawing out the concept map. And this way, not only by drawing out the map are you learning relationships, but when you're going back to review your information, you're going to have these concept maps already drawn out to help you reinforce that information about what those relationships are. So the basic thing is you want to practice, 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 and you don't want to fret about them. You just want to carry them around, and it's going to be a painless way to learn your basic facts and get yourself moving on that learning pyramid. If you want to know some more tips for reducing your study time, go to my blog at theapstudent.org.